In honor of Father's Day, I thought we could discuss child support because majority of men are impacted by the child support system, and there's so many misconceptions about child support. Of course, we can't discuss everything. There's so many variations of the child support system, and that's because it's state to state, and from each state they have their own regulations on how the system is conducted. So we can't touch upon everything, but at least we can address some of the misconceptions about child support, as well as the inception, where child support began, and the premise of it, the public policy behind pushing this sort of social service, as well as some statistics, because you would be surprised that the men who owe child support is a small fraction, a small percentage of men that actually owe child support and who are repeat deadbeat dads with different women, and that's the majority of the amount that's in arrears. But we'll discuss that in this video. Before we do, this is the legal code, and on this channel we discuss a wide range of legal topics, whether that's estate planning, how to protect your small business, the impact of the medical system on Americans. We discuss that there. We discuss a variety of topics. So if you like that sort of thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share with anyone else you think will find this content interesting. Also, I have introduced in my previous channel that I have a medical tourism trip approaching in July 25th to August 4th. This is an opportunity if you're one of the millions, 40 million Americans are underinsured or do not have adequate health insurance. And so I have facilitated a trip for these Americans in order to come to Colombia to get robust, comprehensive, and in-depth, and as well as advanced health care at a fraction of what it would cost the average American in the United States. Most of the services, the medical services provided in Colombia are 60, 70, sometimes 80% less than what it would cost the American if they were to receive that care in the United States. So it's an opportunity for you to receive the health care if your health has been neglected. Many Americans' health have been neglected since the pandemic, who were laid off and lost their health insurance and weren't able to regroup and find another job that offers adequate health insurance. So this is an opportunity for you to receive medical care as well as dental care. I can attest to it because I've seen these doctors, I've seen these dentists. You see these teeth, how beautiful they look. So if you are one of the many millions of Americans whose teeth have been compromised, if you need an implant, if you need dental surgery of whatever variation, then this is really an opportunity for you to take a hold of your health, because America is not coming to save you, unfortunately. You have to take your health into your own hands, and if that means going to another country to receive health care, then that might be what you have to do, because millions of Americans are doing it, and every year the medical tourism industry is growing and compounding. It's $1 trillion industry at this point, and Colombia ranks 22 in the world, outranking Canada and United States when it relates to healthcare. So you're actually receiving better care than you probably would be receiving in the United States, and they outrank the United States. What more can I say? At a fraction of what it would cost you to receive the medical care or the dental care. So sign up. There's a link in the description box. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. The email provided is also a way for you to access me to ask any particular questions that you have. And the trip is ADA friendly. So if you're a person with a disability and you're concerned about traveling to another country because you have some physical challenges, we have all facilitated that too. I'm very aware of physical impairments and providing some comfort in mobility, so that won't be an issue for you if you're concerned about that too. I will lay out a plan particular to you, so that shouldn't be a worry for you. Again, the trip is linked in the description box, and the dates are July 25th, 2023 until August 4th. It's 2 weeks. because I felt that would be an adequate amount of time for someone who received dental care to get adequate testing. And if you want to stay longer as well, you will have support. I will be there, my team will be there, any translation services will be provided, and you will never be alone. So check out the link in the description box. And without further ado, let's discuss child support. Child support disputes can bring out the worst in many parents, conjuring image of greedy ex-spouses and children who are used as pawns in games of parental posturing and revenge. While there may be a certain degree of truth to these stereotypes, there are many myths that are prevalent in the context of child support and divorce. There are many misconceptions about child support, and we're going to discuss the truths about child support and why it is so misunderstood, and how the media presents a very different take on what's really going on behind the scenes. So we're going to pull back the curtain in this video. So let's look at child support, its origins. Where did the system come from? So child support is based on a policy that both parents are obligated to financially support their children. It is well understood, however, that a father only has a legal responsibility to support his own biological children. Thus, a court can't order an individual to pay support for stepchildren, subject to the caveat that that father, formally adopted that child. Child support was officially launched in 1975, although it existed as early as 1935 when the federal government provided welfare assistance to impoverished children. In 1975, the tides changed totally. The typical family looked so different, and the federal government doubled down on child support policy because how families became restructured. So during this time, 1970s is when child support became popular. No-fault divorces had recently been passed, and there was a rapid increases in divorces. As a result, fathers who were the breadwinners were leaving the home in increasing numbers. And so child support was passed so that the mother would not be left destitute. So again, this is 1975. Child support was modeled to try to ensure that after divorce, the household would be replicated. So what the household looked like prior to divorce with regards to the child's well-being and upkeep, there will be little impact economically because the father will still be contributing to the household. So the father will continue to provide income to the child and the family, and the mother will continue to live her life in terms of having physical custody, and she will use the resources from the father. This system was set up this way to bring back what the nuclear family looked like prior to divorce. And nearly everyone who entered the child support system was a product of divorce. Everyone who entered the child support system was a product of divorce. At this time, only 11% of out-of-wedlock children were recipients of child support. Compared to 1990, where out-of-wedlock births rose to 28%, surpassing the amount of divorced women receiving child support. So as you can see, there was an increase in out-of-wedlock births and in turn a reliance on child support. So as the nuclear family broke down, there was also a correlation of greater reliance on child support. Before, when child support was first introduced, there was such a small percentage of out-of-wedlock births, but it became a bedrock for unwed mothers. As these big changes occurred to the family, simultaneously there were gains and losses in the labor market. There are more and more women who are also entering the labor market during the 1970s and 80s. And the question about a woman's role vis-a-vis caring for the child and working and so forth was starting to be really front and center, a discussion of a woman's place within the family or in the economy. Still, the majority of women, when they became mothers, were primary caretakers and not the primary breadwinners. The single mother tropes, that just didn't exist. So married moms were staying at home to take care of their children. During that time period, divorce was one of the single greatest predictors that a woman, especially a woman with children, will fall into poverty. The research indicated that fathers typically gained financially following a divorce, even though they were ordered to pay child support, and mothers typically lost financially. They had both children and reduced income. And so the child support system was hoping to try to offset some of that imbalance, which is where we are today. Well, let's look at child support, the process and how it works, because it's very complicated. The process begins when a mother applies for child support services or when the mother applies for public assistance and they ask, where's the father? And public assistance informs the child support office to check. Then your local child support office works to find the father. The most common way to pay child support is to deduct the payment from the father's paycheck and distribute to the mother, to the other parent. Each state determines their method of calculation, and state follows three basic models. One is the income model, the percentage model, and the Melson formula. I'm not going to get into these models because, as you know, the percentage model is a percentage. New York State follows that model, but that's not really important. But today, there's $113 billion and counting of unpaid child support. So why don't you think the children are receiving that benefit? One reason job loss and unemployment is a major factor to affect a man's ability to pay. If he can't work, he can't afford child support, so he evades working or he works off the books, and the amount is accruing with interest. Also, reimbursement. If the mother was on public assistance and then government recoups what was provided to the mother by taking what the father paid, so in essence, the child may never receive the money, even if paid timely and consistently because of the reimbursement. But there's also a sense that the courts have unrealistically high child support orders and have been inflexible with fathers who lose their jobs and can't pay. For example, New York only recently modified its child support law to exempt payments and interest from people in prison. Also, a lot of the deadbeat dads are the same deadbeat dads that keep having out-of-wedlock children and who do not pay child support and continue to have children, thus straining the system. The majority of the men pay their child support. In fact, 60% of the total money owed in child support each year gets paid. Over 70% of the family get at least something. Yet there's this bottom rung where most of the money is owed by only 11% of the men. So this bottom rung, 11% of the debtors owe 54% of the debt. And that gets the most attention in the media as it relates to deadbeat dads. But these statistics show that there's only a small percentage of deadbeat dads that actually do not pay child support. The majority of men, 70% of men ordered to pay child support, pay child support. Let's do an example of how the arrears in child support works out. Let's look at Texas. So say a father is not working. We can't say zero for his child support order because there's a presumption that he should be working full time, full at least minimum wage. So the judge will often order what's called a minimum wage order, and it's about $2.15 a month in Texas, which is about 20% of the net income for a full-time minimum wage job. So here is a father who is now going to owe $2.15 a month plus $50 a month in medical support for that child. What also happens is that he had a child. What also happens is that he has a child, he's living with the child's mother and now leaves, there's a breakup, and now the child is 2 years old. He's considered to have been evading child support for 2 years, even though he was living with the mother and the child and perhaps contributing to the household. So what the judge will do is say, for the last 2 years, you also owe child support, even though he could have been sharing household expenses with the mother, or say in many instances, the father did not even know about the child for the last 2 years. So he now is in arrears for 2 years for that child support for a child he may not have known about, or on the flip side, was living with the mother, but the relationship just didn't work out. So how can a man actually come out from behind that? It's nearly impossible because the arrears accrues monthly, as well as there's interest. So he's always going to be in the hole. And then that creates a cycle. Well, if he works, he knows he'll be garnished. So then he starts working off the books, and then the child support fund starts to just accumulate because he's not paying. It's a lose-lose. So a lot of the men just start off in the hole. They simply cannot dig themselves out of thousands and thousands of dollars of debt. For some of these guys, having a $5,000 arrears payment that continues to accumulate will be like a middle income person owing $50,000. And so how can anybody rectify that? This applies also to fathers who are incarcerated. We have a huge number of fathers who are incarcerated at some point in their child's life, but it has not been a material reason to alter child support award amounts. Their arrears are still calculated based on state law and does not take into consideration that the father cannot pay. He's not part of the workforce. Once established, child support orders typically remain static unless otherwise reviewed. Fathers or mothers have the right to modify the order, typically 6 months to 1 year or more. In the issuance of some circumstances have changed, modifications are still not automatic, and a judge may decide, no, like your lifestyle changes should not impact the child, so you still have to pay the original amount. And so a court may find a decreased amount is no fault of the child, so you just have to do what you have to do to pay it. Specifically, this means that whatever is owed acts as a non-expiring lien and does not have a statute of limitations to collect. Also, child support cannot be discharged from bankruptcy, and so it's sort of like it really puts men in a pinch. It puts men in a pinch, and in some cases, it criminalizes many men. For a healthy society, we do need men to be held accountable for their children and not having children all over the place and not supporting them, which is the rationale behind child support. Furthermore, it is reasonable for people to say men have to demonstrate that they are going to provide for their children, even if it's $200 a month, and even if they don't have a job, we are going to hold them accountable. Despite this ideal, that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to pay it. We often know that if they're not able to pay their child support formally, they're less likely to be able to contribute informally, such as in parenting time. They're going to stay away from the child. They're not going to be involved. Because of this link of inability to pay child support and being involved in the child's life and the emotional and social components that affect both the child and the father, there have been attempts to reform child support with what's called right-sized orders. This policy takes into account what he actually has the ability to pay when the court establishes the child support order. This in turn can restore confidence in the father. The hostility that impute in the child support can deter fathers from wanting to engage, otherwise he would. How can the system be improved? Well, let's start with the state action. States can set orders of what a father can actually pay. At a minimum, that's what should be done. Next, states need to make a clear and straightforward process for adjusting child support orders when the father's incomes change. Studies have found that fathers pay more often when child supports are set 20% of the income or less. Realistic orders can encourage parental encouragement and provisions for children. Also, the system should help fathers find and maintain employment so that they can pay child support. Work-oriented programs need to be bumped up a lot more to increase employment, increase the rates, make it easier for men to get jobs in order to pay into the child support system. Also, let's recognize that the dads can make significant contributions to their children if these policies are addressed and the relationship between the courts and the mother and the father becomes less hostile, because the father sees the system as helping the family, helping him, helping the child, and helping the mother. But at this point, it leans towards helping the women. Again, that's for a biological reason, so that women It's an economic and a biological reason, because women bear the burden when they have children. Their income, their physical health is impacted. So although the nobility involved in the child support system, in its inception, there was a lot of nobility, there hasn't been adjustments to what's going on in modern days. So hopefully this information has been interesting to you. Did you know that the majority of the arrears of child support is owed by a small percentage of men? It should be brought to your attention, because the media touts such a song about child support and who actually owes it. So I thought it was my duty to share it with you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I've heard horror stories in my line of work with estate planning. I meet with thousands of people, and I've heard horror stories about child support. I even know some men who are paying child support for, although he's always had custody of the child, he's paying child support for a mother who's no longer with us, who has deceased, and he has custody of the child, and he's been paying child support for the last 8 years. It's just a mess. It's a policy change that must come down the pike. So let me know your thoughts, and I will see you next time.